Paranormal King Radio Network, bringing you the best paranormal hosts and guests. Bringing you the best paranormal shows and features. Playing the top musical artists from around the world. Paranormal King Radio Network. With the best paranormal hosts and guests. The best in paranormal shows and features. Playing the best musical artists from around the world. Paranormal King Radio Network. The paranormal will never be the same.
There are things in this world of the paranormal that we do not understand. Entities such as ghosts and mysterious creatures have always haunted our collective consciousness. Amongst all the mystery that exists in our midst, there are occurrences that have earned increased attention. What we present to you now is Haunted Salem's Beyond the Grave, where the dead educate the living.
Welcome to Beyond the Grave Radio with Haunted Salem, where the dead educate the living, here on the Paranormal King Radio Network. I'm your host, Christina Corsetti, and tonight we have a special guest, author and ghost historian, Mike Ricksecker. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, Christina. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm glad you're on the show. Just to get to know you a little better, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a author and ghost historian. Basically, what I define a ghost historian as is someone who researches and investigates a ghost in the place in which it haunts. And throughout my investigations, I've really focused on the history of the locations and the stories of the people themselves. I think it's a pertinent thing to bring those stories out and let the voices of the past and those people be heard. And so this has culminated in a number of books as well. My first two books are actually mystery novels, and then I followed that up with a number of ghost books like Ghosts of Maryland, Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma, Campfire Tales Midwest, and a number of others. And I've also rolled that into my own publishing company now, and video production company called Haunted Road Media, which is the channel for that is on YouTube as Haunted Road Media, so you can catch the videos out there, and then of course you can get the books from a number of fabulous authors. So yeah, I do a lot of different things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now you're a member with Society of the Haunted. Could you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Society of the Haunted is a group that we've been together since 2011 is when that got started. We came out of OKPRI, which people are probably more familiar with because that's who we were on the Haunted. personnel has changed over the years, and I've retained the name Society of the Haunted, but still investigating, and we have the website Society of the Haunted, and it's kind of my efforts with that are kind of separating now with a couple of others, Dave Spinks and David Weatherly, on a different project, different team, which we still haven't announced all of that yet. So that's coming. So I have my hats in a number of different rings.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, from what I understand, the Society of the Haunted that you're involved with went to Black Bear Church and Cemetery for an investigation. The Haunted Black Bear Church is also known as the Church of Darkness in Olive Township, Oklahoma, across from the old Black Bear Cemetery, thought to be haunted through occult practices and sacrifices done on the premises. I believe the church was built in the 1940s, but closed down before the decade was out. It was left to the elements and was struck by lightning in the 90s. It is a frequent victim of arson. Activities included EVPs, the sound of footsteps and shadows, small figures in black robes moving very quickly in strange lights. The cemetery across the street is still being used, but reports of the shadow people crossing the street to the church. Now, from what I understand, an episode of My Ghost Story in which you were on featured the Black Bear Church?
Yeah, that was the Church of Darkness, My Ghost Story episode. And I've been there a few different times, and the My Ghost Story episode kind of combined a couple of those. The way they want you to tell the story is if it was, one time, one story, but it was a few different times that we were out there. And what you were talking about with the crawler and the short shadow people that we see through the windows, very true. Seen a couple of those shadow people. The crawler. There was the one time that we were in the basement of the church, and you could see the crawler kind of darting around the ceiling of the basement down there, and there was a soda bottle down there that went flying on its own. So we believe that it kicked it or threw it or something in our direction. It was very dark at the time, so it was hard to tell exactly what it did with it.
Sure.
But the piece of evidence that I supplied for that particular show was the very first moment that I stepped into that building. First time I ever went, I was the first person to walk up in there. And the very first thing I did is I had my camera on hand, took a picture, and there was this great big ball of light that was hovering over the pulpit area. I quickly snapped some more pictures, didn't get it again, so it was just one time this fantastic ball of light that I was able to capture.
Nice. Well, what do you believe is haunting this location?
Well, what we've tended to believe is that in the back area on the upper level, there's this stone slab, and we're not really sure what that used to be used for. Maybe preparing for the service or what have you. But there have been a couple times that we've been in there and we have found animal remains, drops of blood, some different things like that look like some occult practices.
Rituals
had been attempted in rituals and things like that. So we believe that somebody was out there trying to conjure something up. The one misconception that, and I have to say this every time I talk about this particular location, is that we do not believe that the parishioners of the church that used to frequent there had anything to do with trying to conjure anything. They stopped going there late 60s, early 70s. All that was fine. It's after the fact, after the church was desecrated, and teens started going in there and vandalizing the place and all of that somebody attempted something, and we believe that's where this activity has originated from.
Okay. What kind of EVPs have you captured at this location, if any?
I got a couple of fantastic EVPs over at the cemetery. And now the cemetery, it's kind of interesting because the church, when you walk in, you get this very dark, heavy feeling which you would not expect from a church. And then you go across the street, well, it's really a little dirt road, to the cemetery where you would think you get a dark, heavy feeling. You don't. It's a lot lighter. It's a much more friendly, accommodating atmosphere than the church.
Probably because what happens in the church with the rituals and stuff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the two really good EVPs that I got from there. The first time was we had finished up with our sweep, our little investigation of the cemetery, and we were headed back toward the car, and I was with two others, Kathy and Logan. They're getting in the car, and I decided, well, I want to take one last quick sweep around the cemetery. It's a small cemetery. And I was just walking through the headstones, kind of getting a feel for the place. And at that time, of course, I didn't hear it at this moment, but checking my audio later on, there was a really odd, it was very clear though, a statement that says, "My teeth are warm."
Huh.
So it's very strange. Other people that have listened to the EVP think they hear something else. Whether it's I think somebody said it was they thought they heard it's warm out here or something. Usually people get the word warm and then change up a couple of the other words, but
sure.
To me it's my teeth are warm. It was really interesting after that fact, and I didn't hear that with my ears, but when I went back to the car and was putting my equipment away, the three of us very clearly heard footsteps coming down the dirt road. And we figured, well, it was probably one of the locals that, had seen the, flashing lights from our cameras and the flashlights, that one, checking up to make sure nobody was desecrating the cemetery.
Sure.
So we waited a minute. Nobody showed up. So, we still hear the footsteps. So it's like, okay, let's get in the car and drive down the road a little bit. We were trying to play it safe that night a little bit because we had an experience with coyotes a little while before that. So yeah, they kept getting close, and so that's actually one of the reasons why we went over to the cemetery was because they were the enclosure with the fence was going to protect her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we drove about a half mile down the road to the next little intersection, and we didn't find anybody. So these were some phantom footsteps that were out there.
Huh.
So now the second EVP that was really good that I got from there. Was another investigation that we had done at a later date. And, we were, again, investigating the cemetery. And I'm just, with one of the other investigators at this one grave site, and I noticed that there's two markers for the same guy. And I say, hey, Dustin, take a look at this. There's two markers for the same guy here. It looks like this one's the family headstone, and the other one back there was given to him by the Navy. And on my audio recorder, it picked up the word correct.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and it wasn't his voice. It was, it was a whispered voice that said correct, basically affirming what I had just observed.
Yeah. Isn't that awesome? I love EVPs.
Oh, yeah.
I love going
yeah,
back and listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, and I love it when it goes along, there's an intelligent response that goes along perfectly with what you're talking about. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. Have you ever physically been touched in this location?
Not at that location, no. No, not at that one. No, I mean the closest would have been that incident with the crawler in the basement of the church, but I didn't actually get touched. It just kind of threw the bottle at us.
The bottle, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
any other evidence that you captured at this location that you can tell us about?
At that one, I mean there was one other possible photographic evidence. When I first looked at it, basically it's a photo looking down the stairs into the basement, and my first observation of it was like, oh, that's dust.
Sure.
A little orb, and when I took a look at it a second and third time, I was like, but you know what? It's underneath the ceiling of the basement. You can tell this because half of it's obscured by the ceiling as you're looking down. So it's like, that's got to be at least 4 or 5 feet away from me, and half of it is blocked out by the ceiling portion there. So that actually might not be dust. Mm-hmm. So it's still a question. It's still questionable, but it could have been something.
Well, King wants to know what your definition of a crawler is.
Okay, crawler is basically a dark type of entity that likes to basically crawl along the ceiling. That's kind of why you call it a crawler. It's a type of a shadow person, dark entity, and this particular one, and why we were calling it that, is basically it would. The roof is gone, so it would. From other observations, I didn't see it. I did not witness it in the main church area, but others have witnessed it along the remnants of the roof there, crawling about. And where we saw it in the basement area was around the ceiling area. And so that's basically why you call it a crawler, just because of its physical interactions.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that. Okay, well, the Haunted aired a show about Monster in the Closet in which you were involved. I believe it was the Oklahoma Paranormal Research and Investigations. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah,
all
that
right.
was OPCR, right.
Okay. Monster in the Closet is about a family after having unusual experiences in their home. A family calls upon a paranormal team and demonologist, which is Carl Johnson, to help, which they try to banish the entity from the home. It violently possesses one of the family members and literally enters her body. Could you tell us a little bit about this case and what you were involved in?
Yeah, we investigated at home about 5 or 6 times, and the girl Taliesin was having some problems with a entity that would appear in her closet with red eyes. And what was kind of interesting about this home. Now, this house, for one, had a lot of violence in its existence. It was built in the 1950s, and right away, the first homeowner, he had it was him, his wife, and then he had his father living there. And his father grew despondent, very depressed. His health was failing. He was unable to find work, and he took a rifle, put it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger and committed suicide in the back bedroom where Taliesin was now sleeping at. Right.
Yeah.
A number of years later, that son, that homeowner, got into a big argument with his wife one day. I guess she was talking about leaving or what have you, and he took a pistol and basically tried to take the same out as his father, except he actually missed. He survived the incident, but he did try to commit suicide in the house. So it has this violent past associated with it, and there was also a rumor around town, and we were unable to confirm it. We had a retired police officer tell us a story about a teenage boy who accidentally asphyxiated himself in the closet one afternoon, and we were unable to find any articles, any police reports, anything to corroborate the story. But there was this retired police officer that attested to it, and some of the neighbors that also recalled the incident. So that may have happened.
Okay.
So we have all this negative energy going on. The Osborne family that moved into there, for about 20 years, they all experienced different things within the house that were going on, but they never talked to each other about it. So they would all witness something and just keep it to themselves. This went on for 20 years. Their son also had seen the red-eyed entity when he lived there. And he also described an incident where it sounded like there was a wrestling match going on in the middle of his room one night. And, all kinds of things were getting knocked over, but he couldn't see who was fighting in his room.
Okay.
So, and she basically ended up in this room with the red identity. He ended up moving out.
Wow.
So finally, the family sat down one night, and one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but one of them said, "Hey, do you guys ever experience these different things?" There are other things that they're seeing, like shadows and things like that going on, things being moved in the house. And so one person, like I said, I can't remember which one it was, asking that question broke the ice. And they all had it out at the dinner table, a couple hours of hashing all the different things that they had witnessed. And so we ended up getting called out to investigate what was going on. And the big thing that was going on was Taliesin with the red-eyed entity in her closet.
Okay. So everyone's kind of seen this.
I'm sorry?
Everyone's kind of seen this at different times. The entity with the red eyes.
They've seen it from at different times. The parents didn't see it with the red eyes. They saw the shadow mass, but the two children in there, the grown children, but the two children had seen the entity with the red eyes. So
wow.
It manifested itself in some different ways. We got called up to investigate, and we had a number of different experiences, a lot of different EVPs that we captured along the way. One of the things that they did not show in the show, in The Haunted, it was on Animal Planet. And so its angle was showing how animals react to paranormal activity. Okay. And they left out probably one of the biggest interactions that we had from the cat Jasmine that they had. And what was going on? We're just doing our standard investigation. All of a sudden, she's going crazy. She's kind of running around the house, doing all kinds of weird different things. And we're noticing this, and we're like, wow, she's really bugged out. What's going on? And she walks up toward Taliesin's bedroom. I'm following her. And she just stops right in front of the door. And I look up, and I see what she's looking at. There's this big black mass right in the middle of the room. And so the cat decides not to go in there, kind of peels out around the door and makes off into the living room. And I just watched this thing. It really didn't have a form other than it was almost kind of like big, I want to say a big blob, but it wasn't like a blob. It was just kind of that shape.
Yeah, it's a black mass.
A black mass, misty-like, and then it just dissipated and was gone.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now you can find this all on YouTube, right?
You could find that. You can find the episode on YouTube. I have that deleted scene in one of my videos. It's in my the video of where I talk about my experience on different paranormal shows.
Okay. So basically,
I have that deleted scene in there.
Type in your name, or Society of Haunted, or the Oklahoma Paranormal Research, or anything. They'll come up with all your work.
Yeah, you can just if you go to Haunted Road Media, that channel, and go to Inside Paranormal Shows. That's that's the video, Inside Paranormal Shows, and that'll have that deleted scene in that video. And then, of course, Monster in the Closet. You can find that. They're not supposed to have it out there, but you can find that on YouTube and Daily Motion. And I think it got syndicated to Destination America, because from my understanding, Destination America's picked it up now.
Well, thank you for that information. Sure. Now, they're talking in chat about me mispronouncing Rhodey, Rhodey's name. But Rhodey has a question. I She read that since childhood you encountered things that you couldn't explain. Can you give us some details on that?
Well, yeah. Um, my my first experience. Well, actually, it was probably my second experience. But the first one is inconclusive because I was just too young to really grasp what I saw. But what I say is my first big experience was a shadow person in my room. It's probably about 8 years old, and woke up in the middle of the night, and standing in the corner of my room was this dark humanoid figure.
Okay.
And I tried to scream, couldn't scream. And a lot of people will go with, well, sleep paralysis. You woke up where you were hallucinating. But it's not that, because this thing came up to me, approached me, leaned down, and then did the oddest thing. It took my arms and crossed them across my body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really strange. So my body's moving, so obviously it's not sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
I kept trying to scream, but I was just, too frightened and couldn't
Yeah.
get it out.
Yeah.
It then left me, ran down the hall, opened the linen closet, ran in and closed the door. I don't know why into the linen closet, but that's the way I watched it. I turned my head and watched it go in there. I was finally able to collect myself, of course, when I'm running off to my parents' bedroom. Like, oh, you're just dreaming. But I know that was not a dream. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so live, but but it's just it's horrifying. I mean, I've been through things myself. My mother has been through things herself.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely understand. So that's what she was talking about.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Well, going back to the monster in the closet, was it more of a demonic case?
What it ended up getting defined as was a wraith, and our cult specialists at the time, Chris Borthwick and Carl Johnson, sat down and hashed it out, and I guess they deduced that it was a wraith, and there's a couple different definitions for wraith out there, and I guess their take on it was that it was a human spirit that had turned malevolently evil in the afterlife. That's the definition they were going with.
Okay.
So, now people have asked whether or not that could possibly be the spirit of the father that committed suicide in the house. That's a good question. Of course, the other question also is, has this thing been there for longer than the house has been built, and perhaps maybe influenced the father into killing himself?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's the latter. And I really don't have much to go on for that, other than one, feeling and intuition, and two, there is an EVP that I have where the last name of the family that had lived there back during the 50s was Kathy. And I had asked if this was Mr. Kathy, if this was spirit of Mr. Kathy. Now, of course, it could lie, but the response back on the EVP was not Kathy.
Oh, wow. There you go.
So that's why I tend to believe it's something that was older, that is, or was, because it's not there anymore, but was malevolent and evil, and influenced the father into killing himself, and then later on, basically, destroyed that marriage, and then his son tried to shoot himself. So I think it's been there for a while.
Can you give me one more time the definition that you mentioned of the wraith? I just want to go over it one more time in my head.
Yeah. They're going with the definition, because there's a couple of different ones. But the definition that they were using was a human spirit that has turned malevolent and evil in the afterlife.
Oh, okay. So whether or not it was an evil in life, it just turned it in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was a human spirit, a wraith.
It was a human spirit, right?
All right. Going back and forth here. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and we did successfully cleanse the house, and that whole process is depicted in that episode of Monster in the Closet.
Oh, nice. I definitely want to check that out. That seems very interesting. Raven Wings has a question.
Okay.
Just get to it here real quick. Every time. Okay. Did you ever figure out why your childhood friend couldn't hang stuff on her walls?
Oh, wow. Okay. Other than the fact that we knew something was in that house preventing it, no. And I mean, oh, wow. I wish I could go back and figure that one out. I mean, I was 16 at the time. It was my first, real investigation. I mean, we just kind of like threw ourselves into it. We didn't know what we were doing.
Sure.
I mean, there was a cemetery in the backyard. It was a older historic home within the town. So there could have been any number of people that had an attachment to that house, and may have died in the house, may have been buried out back. Definitely something was not liking things to be hung up on that wall. I would love to find out exactly what that was, but no, we never did pinpoint who or what was knocking the things off the wall.
Okay. That's interesting. King wants to know if you think shadow people experiences are more common than seeing spirits.
I think it depends on the person. I think everybody tends to experience the paranormal around them a little differently, just because of their own self. Different people are able to pick up on different vibrations, and so I tend to see more shadows than apparitions, where other people that I talk to tend to see more apparitions than shadows, or they may hear a lot more with their own ears than I do, or whatever. So I think different people are in tune to the paranormal in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. Okay. Going back to
Good
what we
question,
were
though.
talking. Yeah, it was a great question. Going back to what we were talking about, can only demons possess, or can this wraith possess as well?
That's another good question, because I know that that came up where there was a moment where Taliesin did seem to get possessed by this thing, or at least controlled by it to a large extent.
So it is possible.
Yeah. And I'll describe the instance. Sue was on the phone. Sue was the mother. She was on the phone with Carl Johnson, and just telling him about the different things that were going on in the house, what was happening with her daughter, all of that. And Taliesin became something other than herself, and started yelling and screaming at her mother. And when she found out that it was Carl Johnson that was on the other end, apparently was familiar with Carl, because it started saying things like, I think the term was rebuker, that used as a rebuker that's on the phone, or something to that effect. So she was either heavily influenced, or maybe did possibly get temporarily possessed by this thing. It ended up leaving after a short period of time. But yeah, there was that incident.
Okay. Well, you did say that you did come to terms with the wraith, and you did end up getting rid of it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that was and that's on the episode, the cleansing of the house. I went through the entire house to cleanse the home, which was a really, really wild night. In the middle of this cleansing that we're doing, now we had the family sit outside in the side yard, but Taliesin came in to use the restroom in the master bedroom.
Okay.
And so as we're going through, we realized the Talisman's in the house. And when we got to the master bedroom, she's standing in the room talking at something that she sees, but it looks like she's talking at the wall, basically trying to tell whatever she's seeing that, it needs to get out, needs to leave her alone, asking questions of like, why do you keep doing this, that sort of stuff. So Carl starts doing a blessing over Taliesin, and this is where things start to get really crazy.
Okay.
While he's doing this blessing over Taliesin, she doubles over in pain and falls to the floor. Now, on the episode, there's an EVP that they include in the episode, but they show it while we're investigating, not during the cleansing, and that EVP is die. We did not get that while we were investigating. We got it right then and there when she doubled over in pain.
Wow.
The entity said, die. You can hear her go, oof, and doubles over in pain, falls to the floor. So we picked her up, put her on the bed. She woke up, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds later. She wasn't out that long. After she got back up, a couple other things started happening that they didn't show in the episode. We had a tri-field meter set up in her bedroom on top of her dresser, which was near the closet where she kept seeing the red eyes. That started going off like crazy. Then a couple minutes after that, the back door that leads outside, that's in the master bedroom, blows open. And so we close the door, it blows open again. We close the door, it blows open again. We hit a deadbolting the thing to keep it shut. Carl ends up doing a blessing over the door to stop it from blowing open. So a lot of crazy things happen all within a span of about maybe 10 minutes. It's crazy. Wow. So eventually we finish up with the blessing, the cleansing of inside the house, and the goal was to push it out through the backyard.
Okay.
So we end up in the backyard, and we're back there. Carl's leading a prayer. The wind kicks up like crazy. The cats are running around in circles around us. Again, another crazy moment. And, it really winded Carl. When we finished it up, the wind died down. Carl was basically down on his knees when we, helped him back up, and he was a bit lightheaded. And we helped him back into the house. Now, remember I said the family was in the side yard. And so we'd gone over there and let them know that we were done. And one of the other investigators remarked, that was some really wild wind that kicked up, wasn't it? And the father, Daniel, was like, what wind? They didn't experience any wind at all in the side yard, and we were in the backyard basically almost getting blown over by this stuff. It was crazy.
Wow. That's weird.
So we kept in touch with the family for quite a while after that, and they hadn't experienced anything with the wraith after that. So that was a successful cleansing.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's definitely great. Raven Wings has another question. She wants to know, have you yourself ever felt a spirit try to enter or control you?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that's, it's, I don't usually talk about this. It's happened to me a couple times in the middle of the night. It's when, whatever it is will make its attempt. It's happened a few times in my life, not for a while. It's been a few years, but, yeah, that's happened a few times where I have felt this immense pressure pushing down on me while I'm laying there in bed in the middle of the night. And I just keep praying. I keep praying because I can feel whatever it is trying to get inside of me. And praying has worked. It's there have been times it's lasted very, very long. But it's never gotten inside of me, at least not that I know of. But yeah.
That's crazy. All right. Well, you also have been on a recent investigation with Dave Spinks and David Wellerly at the Haunted Speakeasy in Hartford City, Indiana. Now, what is the Haunted Speakeasy?
Yeah, this was an interesting location in Hartford City. They have a few different locations over there that are pretty interesting. This particular one, during Prohibition, it was used as a speakeasy. It's a second story of some historic buildings in the little downtown area. Most of it was used as old office area. Excuse me. And this back room, kind of large, and since then somebody tried to set up a little club in there or something at some point. But it's pretty sizable. And they had, that's where they were doing their drinking and gambling, and there was prostitution and all that back there.
Huh.
We got some interesting responses using the ghost box. We kept we were asking some very similar questions using different devices for the ghost box. We had the a couple of what the heck is this thing? All similar things but different applications to try to confirm what we were getting. And every time we kept getting some the same responses. Like, it wanted to talk to me, it wanted to tell me something, but never would. A couple of the names that we came up with were the same. We kept confirming who the boss was. The boss was named Chief, or was the Chief. We kept getting that a lot. So we're getting some interesting responses that kind of correlated to history in that regards. Like, cops kept coming up when we were asking about what had happened there. Now, one of the interesting things happened while we kind of just started the investigation. Dave was setting up we were going to do a live stream there, and he was having some problems with the equipment, so he was trying to take care of that. So, David and I were sitting at the table. We had a bunch of trigger objects sitting there, like a little bottle of Crown Royal, some cards, some chips, things like that. We're trying to get it to interact, but nothing was really happening at first. So, after a little while, David and I just kind of broke into some casual conversation about writing and books, and all of a sudden, right in the middle of the table, we get this really loud popping sound, like a water bottle that had been crumpled up just suddenly expanded really quick and made that pop sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Except there was nothing like that was there. We look under the table, no water bottle on the table. There was a couple things that were plastic. Like the bottle of Crown Royal was just a little one, so it was a little plastic bottle, but it couldn't have possibly made that kind of sound. It wasn't the right type of plastic. It was just cards and poker chips, so there was nothing there that could possibly make that sound. So
that's crazy.
It was was definitely crazy. So, and David took out his Obvilus, and the first question that he asked was, did you make that, or who made that sound? He asked, who made that sound? And the Obvilus comes back and says, you. It's like, no, it wasn't us.
Yeah, this is on the ghost box now. Is this what you use in the ghost box?
I've used a little bit. Dave and David certainly like to use that quite a bit. If you watch Dave Spinks on his live streams, his new channel's Real Supernatural. But you'll see a lot of ghost box work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he gets a lot of great responses with it.
Yeah, I've been new to the ghost box thing, and our last investigations that we've been on ourselves, I've been new to using it, and it comes back pretty good. I think they're awesome. Rhodey has a question in chat. She wants to know why everything happens at night, or when these things happen or happen to you, or anybody. Why it has to happen at night?
It doesn't have to happen at night. There's a lot of paranormal activity that happens during the day.
Really?
Oh yeah. You hear, like, you go to some of these different historic locations, and they're open during the day, not at night. But the staff, they're witnessing all this activity during the day.
It doesn't seem like when you're in bed and things happen to you, because it happened when things happened to me, I was always in bed. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I think that's what she means. Like, why is it always things happen like at night in bed? Like, it just,
I
any
mean,
idea?
it could be just one of those things where it's each person experiences things differently, and so maybe that's the point in time during the day where her body, her aura, whatever you want to call it, is able to experience that activity better. It could be during the day. We get busy throughout the day, and so that part of ourselves could conceivably get turned off during that time. But at night, when you're relaxed, when you're more relaxed and your guard is down, then
Yeah, that's what Ravenwing
you
says. She says you're most
yeah,
vulnerable at night.
yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, let's talk about some haunted locations.
Okay.
The Stone Lion Inn. It's in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and it's considered to be one of the most sought-after haunted places as far as destinations for those that seek to experience real ghosts and spectacular paranormal activity. Why is this considered the most sought-after haunted place?
Well, it's considered the most. I mean, it is actually a very haunted location, but it's one of the most sought after, at least in Oklahoma, because the owner is very particular as to who she lets in. So it's
Okay.
hard to get into. It's a working bed and breakfast that does a murder mystery dinner theater as well, which I have done the murder mystery dinner theater there, and they do a very, very good job. So really the only time you can investigate there is on a Sunday night.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't want to investigate on a Sunday night. And like I said, she's pretty particular about who she lets in. I know for a long time she was only letting the group that I had been, OKPRI, into there. She was good friends with the leader of the group.
Right.
So it's hard to get in there. But it is a very haunted house, and basically it's my favorite haunted location in Oklahoma. When you walk up to the house and you look at it, you're just like, yeah, that's a haunted house. I mean, it's just it's the epitome of what you would imagine in your head what a haunted house looks like from the outside.
Huh.
And then you go inside. Oh yeah, oh, yeah. And then you go inside, and it's like immediately you get that total creepy feeling, like there's stuff going on here. And if you just stand there and listen, you hear creaks and groans and footsteps and whispers, and you hear doors opening and closing. It's a very, very active house. I've got a lot of great activity there. One of my best pieces of evidence, not quite as good as that great big ball of light that I got at Black Bear Church, but I did get a really fantastic white wisp in a photograph there.
Oh, wow.
It was just after we just started our investigation, and we had noticed for whatever weird reason in the entrance hall, there's this bureau there. Oh, and I have to mention this real quick. The entrance hall also contains a real embalming table, from the 1920s, 1930s era when it was a mortuary. So the actual embalming table is there in the entrance hall. It's pretty cool.
So it was a funeral home before it was an inn.
It was for a period of time. It was originally a home. The family had to move out for financial reasons. It was a mortuary. Then the family ended up coming back to the home. And then once the family died off, it switched hands. It became a bed and breakfast in the 90s. Becky bought it in 1986, used it as a home for herself and her boys for a while. And then she turned it into a bed and breakfast. So,
okay, well, before we leave, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Got a little sidetrack there.
Oh, no, go.
Because I could get into the history for forever. So there's this bureau that's in the entrance hall, blocking a set of double doors that goes into a parlor that she's turned into a bedroom suite. So there's a little side door that you're supposed to use for the entrance into there. So she has this bureau blocking these double doors, and we had noticed that for whatever weird reason, one of the drawers on the bureau was open. We didn't pay it any mind. We just kind of walked by, just kind of nervous. Oh, why is that open? We go into the parlor suite, and we had just started to do a little investigating, and all of a sudden we hear this slam come from the direction of the entrance hall. So we go rushing out there, and that bureau drawer has been slammed shut.
Huh.
So we start getting out the meters. I start taking pictures, and that's where I got this white wisp. It was between one of our investigators, Johnny, and the bureau, which is kind of hovering there. So a few minutes later, probably maybe about 5 minutes later, we decided that our group was a little large, so we were going to instead split up. So I started leading a team up the stairs, and I'd gotten to the landing that's about 3/4 of the way up, and then it turns. And I'd gotten right about there, and another one of the investigators started walking up, and right between us, a framed picture that was on the wall just crashes to the staircase and shatters. So we're like, what in the world? Nobody bumped the wall. We were just walking up the stairs like usual. So we got on and we started picking it up, and we noticed that it was the framed picture that she had of Lizzie Borden.
Oh, I love Lizzie.
Yeah.
That's my
So
favorite
wow,
kid.
this is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, do you
that was a
believe
wild
because
day.
it was once a funeral home, that's why so many spirits reside there at that location?
Well, I mean, that's one possible reason. Because there are a few different entities that are said to hang out there. One is a man with a top hat, and he's usually either associated with the funeral home or possibly the original owner. He's seen with a top hat. That's what people know him as. Now there is a little girl there, and her identity's kind of gone back and forth between a couple of possible girls of the original family. So there's one that was known to have died when she was very young, but the kicker with this is that she didn't die in that house. She died in the house before that. So some people think that maybe she came from that other house. There's also a little girl that may have been there. She's in the census records, but nobody's been able to find a death record of her. And there's a photograph in a newspaper from, I think it was 1915 or 1916, something like that. And she's not in that photograph, but she's in the 1910 census records. So there's this mysterious other child that is out there that it could be her. But Becky's son, one of her sons, would see this little girl in the attic a lot and would play with her in the playroom up there. And so that's where a lot of people will go up and they'll investigate there, and there's toys and things set up. And people have picked up the EVPs. The one was, can you find me? It was a little girl's voice.
Sure. Okay,
It was a fantastic location.
You mentioned Becky. Now, she's the owner. Becky, is it Luker?
Becky Luker, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I guess when she purchased the place, she began renovations. And
Right.
I guess normally when you renovate something, it often awakes the spirits. So this is what I have down as what's going on in the Stone Lion Inn. The sound of what resembles of someone walking would be experienced in the early mornings on the staircase in the back. A number of odd and unusual sounds were experienced on a regular basis. A great many doors seemed to open at random, but the fear intensified when they would also shut by themselves. The owner's son would put away his toys as expected each night, and in the morning they would be scattered around. The visual experience of a child and or children playing in the rooms and jumping on the beds, even when no live children were there. Items being moved that the guests leave in the room has been experienced, and many claim that they have been tucked in bed while staying at the Stone Lion Inn when there was no one there at all. So that's what I have down.
Yeah, that's pretty much part for the course. And I haven't experienced the tucking in part, but everything else, yeah. I mean, there's I've seen doors open and close on their own there. I've seen shadows there as well, kind of just like quickly whisk into the room. Yeah, it's a fantastically haunted location.
What kind of hauntings reside there? Like, do you think it's residual? It's intelligent?
I think it's a bit of both. I
Okay.
think there is some residual there as far as like the footsteps that you get. Maybe the man in the cop hat is a residual haunt. Somebody's talked about having an actual intelligent experience with him. The little girl seems to be an intelligent haunt. Because people have been able to interact with her to some degree. Like I said, Becky's son was able to interact with her. And yeah, the toys to get played with and things like that. So I think it's a combination of both.
Okay, and this place is open to the public for investigations, like you said, or tours. You
Well,
can do it on
yeah, I
Sunday, like you
mean, you
said.
can. Yeah, well, you can definitely do the Murder Mystery Dinner Theater. As far as investigating, and that would be having to call Becky. Like I said, she's been pretty particular about who she lets investigate there.
Sure.
So it's been a few years, but it's always worth a shot.
Okay. Next, we have the Samuel Mudd House. This is another one I believe you wrote about in one of your books, Haunted Maryland.
Yeah, Ghost of Maryland, right.
Okay, well, Samuel Alexander Mudd was a farmer and practicing physician during the Civil War, and he was a Confederate sympathizer and member of the Confederate Underground. He was accused and convicted of being part of John Wilkes Booth's conspiracy to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. Dr. Mudd met Booth 3 times in 1864. After Booth shot Lincoln, he broke his left leg and he leapt from Lincoln's box to the stage at Ford's Theater. Needing a doctor's assistance, Booth and David Harold showed up at Dr. Mudd's house at 4 a.m. The doctor stated that his military trial that he did not recognize Booth. He told the tribunal that when Booth and Harold arrived, they gave him names of Tyson and Hedston. Dr. Mudd set and splintered Booth's broken leg. He stated he did not know about the assassination until he went to Bryantown to do an errand with his wife. Booth was still recovering in the upstairs bedroom of his home at one time. And Booth and Harold stayed at the doctor's home for approximately 12 hours, paid him $12 for his services, and then headed into a nearby swamp. I guess shortly after this, Dr. Mudd was arrested and charged with conspiracy for harboring Booth and Harold as they escaped. Mudd was tried with 6 other men and 1 woman, and he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. He missed the death penalty by 1 vote. So, what kind of photos did you capture here, or what kind of interesting things happened?
Yeah, it's a real interesting history, and you touched on a lot of it. And the docents there that run the facility still insist that Samuel Mudd was innocent. He was actually pardoned by President Andrew Johnson after because he was sent to Fort Jefferson, where they broke out in yellow fever. So he aided the prisoners and the staff there during that. And so he was pardoned for his treatment of everybody there during that yellow fever outbreak. So it's a fantastic farmhouse, and there's a lot of activity there that people witness as far as, again, hearing things like footsteps. There's people that say that they get pushed out of the little attic that's up there. I have seen somebody, we thought she tripped coming out of there, and she ended up falling into me, which is kind of a weird, awkward moment. There's a bedroom where there's dolls in a rocking chair that they tend to get thrown out of the rocking chair.
Wow.
And then, yes, there's a fantastic photograph that Rhonda Dixon from Inspired Ghost Tracking took that looks like Samuel Mudd walking down the stairs. It's a great photograph. I have that in one of my videos, my Ghosts and Legends video on the Samuel Mott house.
Sure.
Her pictures included in there. So
It's a very
and
interesting
then,
house. I mean, a lot of history, as you said.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of history associated with it. In fact, in my book, Ghosts of Maryland, I included an excerpt from it was a journal that Samuel Mott's wife, Frankie, had been keeping, and I included an account that she had recorded while the Union soldiers were there at the farm. It was while John Wilkes Booth was still on the run, and they were just running their errands, and the Union soldiers would stop them and frisk them, go through the thing that they were carrying, and make remarks like, "Oh, we thought you were, carrying supplies to Booth," and things like this. So they really thought that they were harboring him and holding him. Of course, he was eventually caught in Virginia, so he wasn't even around the area at the time he left. But they were harassing the Mudd family. So the thing that I got is kind of a interesting tale that I like to tell of that house was, now I've had some interesting problems, been there a couple of times, and I always have, I seem to always have some sort of problem with my electronic equipment. And the first time that I'd gone there, for whatever reason, and I was just doing the research for my book, my photographs ended up deleted, gone, missing. I didn't have them. And I was sitting there, I'm writing up the chapter, going through my notes and the interviews and everything that I did. And so I wanted to, go through some of the pictures, and they were gone. So it's like, I got to make another trip out there. I don't know why they disappeared, but
they just disappeared, huh? Right.
So, another time they went, my audio was completely gone. So it didn't record any audio. It's weird because here's this video of me talking, but there's no audio.
Wow. It's
crazy.
like a blockage. That's what happens to me when I go on investigations. And Grunge, he will know this because he does a lot of the review for our team. But all my pictures, they come out with these colorful lines, it's like a disturbance in the photo, and I can't seem to get a normal photo. It always has these colorful lines going through them, and it's like a blockage. It's like they're blocking you. They don't want you to do this, and that's probably why you lost your audio and lost your things, because it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I think there was something there that was trying to prohibit me from doing what I was doing. But I did make another trip out there, my second trip out there, to go retake the photographs. It's kind of a funny little story to start with. The day that I got up there, now it was about a 2-hour drive from where I was living at the time. I get all the way out there, and the gate at the front of the drive is locked up. They're closed, and I see the sign. I'm like, they're closed today. I just drove 2 hours down here. No.
Oh, geez.
So I figure, well, okay, maybe I can get some long-range pictures here of the house, and I can use the house in the book. But I was fortunate in that one of the docents suddenly drove up in his truck and asked me, what was going on. I said, well, I drove all the way out here to, take some photographs because somehow I lost my photos, and I just want to get a few pictures. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'm opening the house for a private viewing today, and I can let you walk through and take your photos while I'm opening up the house. I said, okay, cool, that's great, awesome. Yeah. So he's a real nice guy. So going to the house, start taking some pictures, and I started asking him about the different experiences that he's had there, because he wasn't there the first time that I was there. So this was a different docent. And so, he's talking to me about how different people have seen Mrs. Mudd there from time to time, her apparition. He talked about the dolls, a lot of different things. And as we're walking up the stairs to go to the second floor, he's telling me about the room where John Wilkes Booth had slept, that a lot of times in the morning they will find this impression in the bed as if somebody had been sleeping there.
Wow.
And it's annoying to them because then they have to fix the bed and they want to make it look all, real nice and presentable for the public. So we walk into that room, and he starts opening up the shades. I look down at the bed, and sure enough, there's the impression in the bed as if somebody had been sleeping there. And so I look at it, and I'm like, you mean a bed impression like this? And he looks at it, and he's all upset. It was the funniest thing. He's like, see, that's what I'm talking about. We got to straighten it out and make it look real nice. We got to do this almost every day. And he was rambling on, and he rushed over there to try to fix it. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Can I get a couple pictures of it first? So
That's crazy.
I did get a couple pictures, and one of those is in the book, Ghosts of Maryland. So that's one of my funny tales I like to tell from there. So,
Okay.
But yeah, you could see where there would be an elbow in the feet and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of haunting you think resides at the Samuel Mudd House? Meaning residual, intelligence. Probably. I mean, it goes back. It goes way back.
Yeah, it does
So
go
definitely
quite a ways back. It seems to be a lot of it there is residual. Consistently, this bed impression happens. I think that's probably something residual. The apparition of Mrs. Mudd, from my understanding, has not been interactive. That she's just been seen a few times. So that's likely a residual. The photograph of Samuel Mudd walking down the stairs, I mean, that's just a one-time deal. The only thing that would give any sort of possible credence to maybe being somewhat of an intelligent haunt would be the dolls flying off the chair. Now, I haven't seen that happen with my own eyes, but there's a lot of people that attest to that happening. So,
Sure.
So if there is an intelligent haunt there, that would be the one.
Okay. You know what? Why don't we take a little break, and when we come back, we have a couple more haunted locations to go over, and that'll be it. So
Okay.
we'll take a little break, and we'll be back.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Beyond the Grave Radio with Haunted Salem, where the dead educate the living, here on the Paranormal King Radio Network. I am your host, Christina Cressetti, and tonight we're here with author and ghostorian Mike Ricksecker. We are discussing haunted locations right now, and our next one is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Now, did you write about this one in one of your books, Mike?
Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, I have not actually written in any of my books. It's in,
have you performed any investigations there?
I have.
Okay.
It's in West Virginia. So my books are so far Maryland, Oklahoma, Campfire Tales Midwest is the Midwest.
Okay.
Ghost Story and Case Files is kind of like all over the place. But yeah, this is in Weston, West Virginia, and I was there one time for a book signing. This
Nice.
was 2011, so it was almost 5 years ago now. A friend of mine, Copperhead, Greg Graham, works there. He does a lot of the tours. He's been there for years, and it's a another fantastically haunted location. There's all kinds of activity that goes on there. It's one of the big places to investigate. And
sure.
he helped me out where I had a book tour set up for the East Coast because I was Ghost of Maryland had just come out earlier that year, but I had moved to Oklahoma during the time that it was being published. And so it was, really crazy. It's like, oh, great, I'm going to have this Maryland book that's published, and now I'm out in Oklahoma. And so I had to set up a tour to go back east to tour the book. And the one big venue that I had set up that was for an entire weekend fell through. So I had all these other things set up, and this huge gap in the middle. I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? So my friend Margaret Ehrlich from Inspired Ghost Tracking had set up an event back out in Maryland, so I appreciated that. But then on the way into Maryland, Copperhead had helped me out by setting up a book signing there at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which was fantastic. So now they run historic tours throughout the day, and then at night they start the ghost tours, and then they have an all-night ghost night that you can also do.
Nice.
And so, yeah, it's really, really great. Makes for a long day. Now, I will say, before we start this, that those that are listening that watch my Friday Night Ghost Frights, a little sneak peek, this is actually what's coming out tomorrow for Friday Night Ghost Frights, is my Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum story.
Awesome.
So, and I'll have some of the video and photos and things like that I took there. So now this place is another highly active location. Just sitting there doing the book signing, it was during the day it was a little slower. So that's some dead period. We're just kind of sitting there and maybe chatting a little bit with some of the people that work there, and you hear footsteps walking down the hall, and there's nobody walking. And there's one time you hear footsteps, and one of the doors to one of the wards opens and closes, and you're like, is somebody down there? We walked down over, took a look, opened the door to the ward, looked down the hall. Nope, there's nobody there. Closed the door, and then all of a sudden, walking back, the door to the men's bathroom opens up on its own. There's nobody in there. It's like, okay. There's just the entrance hall, and there's crazy stuff going on. So it's not very large. It's like, a key, and, it's, wow, okay. So it's kind of, I'm getting slowly introduced to, what goes on here. So,
well, I can imagine spending a night there, just to spend a night in there and see exactly what happens, throughout the night. Because it goes back to the 1800s, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes back into the 1800s. Served at a time during the Civil War, at the Civil War Hospital, I believe, and then of course they had all the where it was actually a state-run hospital. It's actually the Weston State Hospital, and it was originally built for, I think, 250 people, and eventually they had over 2,000 people in there. So they were cramming a lot of bodies in there, which is pretty sad. So, yeah, we got
400 people to 250. I mean, that's crazy.
right.
You
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
and
they
for
did
the
expand
listeners,
a little bit during that time, but the expansion still wasn't enough to really house everybody. So yeah, we got to the all night ghost night part of it, which excuse me, starts to go dry. So I was part of Copperhead's group as we went through, which was great because we basically met over the internet. We chatted a lot and talked to each other on the phone and things like that. And I saw a lot of his different videos and things like that. So I finally got a chance to actually work with him, and it was pretty cool to see him work with. He has his dowsing rods, and so I got to see him work with those. And he got some interesting activity using that. And then I introduced him to my different methods where, I'll basically like sit in a room and I'll start off by introducing myself. And he thought it was the coolest thing, right? To put out my hand to like as a handshake, while introducing myself to whatever may have been there. And this one time that I was doing this, we felt this heaviness kind of start to creep into the room. We were looking at each other like, okay, something's going on. And, we start talking, which we're trying to do an EVP session. And, it slowly starts to dissipate away. And then we hear the footsteps go out the door and down the hall. And so we run out to the hallway if nobody's there. And we're like, wow, okay, so I guess it's just got tired of our questions and walked off. So it was an interesting evening. A lot of different. I mean, it's just another one of those places that you get a lot of different activity. I mean, we had that with the footsteps. There are other rooms that we went to where you could hear these knocks, and or you're in one room and you're trying to do something in the next room, you hear something get thrown against the wall or whatever. The one room was a water bottle or some plastic that was on the floor. It's like, walking there like, oh, okay, so that's what it was, something in the corner, but it just didn't make it can't, get up on its own and do that.
Absolutely.
The coolest thing that happened there was like toward the end, and we're up in one of the wards where there's the spirit's name is Frank. Essentially, he's known by everybody there. And the main bulk of the group went off down the hallway of this ward. And Copperhead and I went into this room off on the side where he had a number of different objects set up there that, because I guess this is the room where Frank usually hangs out at, and he's got some good interaction with. Okay. And along the same wall as the door, there's a couple of balls sitting there. And, we're setting up, cakes meter, millimeter. Copperhead had these flashlights that he was setting up in the middle of the floor. And all of a sudden, the one ball, which was a light-up ball, where, when it starts bouncing, the lights up, all of a sudden, it starts bouncing out the door. Now, it was against the wall, and so basically moved itself along the wall, out the door. So basically, it took a left and it took a right down the hallway, started bouncing down towards the group that was at the end of the hall. And they start shouting, "Hey, who's throwing the ball down here? What's going on?" They come running back. Are you throwing that ball at us? I was like, no, we're in the middle of the room here setting up. It just basically got up on its own and bounced down the hall.
That's crazy. That'd be awesome to see.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see. And unfortunately, it happened so fast. We didn't have a chance to get it on video or take a picture of it or anything like that. So we all scrambled into the room. We were trying to see if we can get it to do it again, but it didn't. But that was pretty cool.
Well, it's kind of sad, what takes place in these places, like electroshock therapy, lobotomies, bizarre chemical treatments. I mean, from what I understand, being overcrowded, it was common to lock up the worst the patients in cages. They would basically rage like animals. They would wallow in their own naked filth. Often they were in chains. You have patients killing patients. From what I understand, there's an asylum worker here that was murdered. Female workers were raped, and in one case, a nurse mysteriously went missing while on duty, and they found her body 2 months later at the bottom of a stairwell. So, I mean, so much has gone on in these places, and I'm sure all the places, they're just like that, and it's kind of sad, but because of that, I mean, there's got to be tons of activity that happens there because of this. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Some of the stories that I've heard from Copperhead over the years, and he'll tell me about some group that he was taking through, and people will get bumped, they'll have their hair played with, they'll get pushed, they'll hear and see all kinds of different things. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of activity that they experience there.
I mean, just the corruption itself, it's got to be a hotbed of activity.
Yeah, there's a lot of negative energy that's there. Definitely a lot of negative energy.
Do you believe that you can find all sorts of hauntings in these places, such as intelligent residual, even poltergeists? Do you think poltergeists happen in these places because of the corruption and everything that bad happens?
Well, certainly that all plays into it. You inject some sort of energy into a place, and it's all different varying types of vibration. So you set off an extreme amount of negative vibration, negative energy, and so you'll start having more dark, malevolent type things happening, and poltergeist activity where things are getting thrown around. I mean, basically with the bouncing down the hall. That's poltergeist. That's poltergeist activity. Now it wasn't malevolent; it was just a ball, bouncing down the hall. But there are other things that have happened there that are more serious in nature than a wall.
Because that's got to get a lot of energy just to be able to move something. Never mind take a ball and bounce it down the hall. So that's going to be more than intelligent. Do you believe because of all the abuse these patients endured that they're trapped at this location?
Yeah, there's definitely entities that are trapped. But one of the sadder ones is a little girl named Lily that's there, and so there are a lot of stories about people interacting with Lily. But people get trapped there, and they don't understand that they can move on if they like. And maybe there are some that do understand, just don't want to. So we kind of don't always know their motives or what they do and don't know about their station in the universe at the moment.
During your investigation, did you catch any EVPs or anything nice happen?
With that one, I have to be quite honest, I never actually went through the audio from that investigation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I ended up, because I had the whole rest of the book tour and the drive back and then all of that stuff. Right when I got back, we had a bunch of investigations lined up that I had to go through audio through because we were, helping families and things like that. So it was like, I always put that on. I still have that audio. I always put it on the back burner. Like I'll get to that one of these days and see if I actually caught an EVP while I was there. So I have the audio. I've just never listened through it.
Well, you're a busy man, I mean, some things gotta go to the back burner. I know that feeling. All right, one of our last locations, the Bel Air House. Have you done any investigations or anything in this house?
Yeah, Bel Air House. That was one of my more recent investigations with Dave Spinks and David Weatherly.
Okay.
And this was my first time I've ever been there. I joined them on the second night of, I think it was a 2-day investigation that they had done. So I joined them on the second night there. And they kind of gave me the little tour of the house, and then we're just, kind of like right off the bat, I think we had, or we were going to do the tour of the house. And kind of like right off the bat, we're in the first, I guess maybe it's a parlor or whatever. And we're just chatting a little bit. And there's this little heart figurine that's on the mantle. And all of a sudden it starts moving and falls to its side, just out of nowhere. Like, oh, okay, it's going to be one of those type of nights. It was kind of interesting. Some of the different things that we got. Now, at the same time, I run a radio show called the Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I do this with Vanessa Hogle, and this investigation happened to be on the night that we were running the radio show. So we actually did a live broadcast during the investigation out of it. And I didn't tell Vanessa anything about what we were doing or where we were at. She's a remote viewer. So we asked her, what she could pick up on the house. Immediately, this is how good Vanessa is, immediately she basically describes the floor plan of the house to a T.
Oh, wow.
And where the most active room is. She's like, if you want to get to the most active room in the house, you go, through the front door, up the stairs, to the left, all the way down the hall, and it's like, wow, okay, you nailed it. So, yeah, we during the radio show, we took her up there. I had my phone on speaker, and we go up there, and like in the middle of the interview, she's picking up all these different things. Start hearing like knocks on the walls. The temperature in this room, this is the thing that we noticed all night long. The temperature in this room seemed like it had to be like 78 degrees. But we're looking at the temperature gauge that we had on the millimeter, and it's showing in the mid 60s, like 63, 64 degrees. And it's like, no way. This is like roiling hot. It's like 78. It's got to be like 78, almost 80 degrees in here. And so when we went up to the attic later on, millimeter still, somewhere between, 62, 63 degrees around there. So it's like showing the same temperature as this other room, and it was so much cooler up there in the attic. It was like, there's no way. This is crazy.
Usually it's the opposite. Usually you get the coldness in the room, not so much hot, right?
Right. Yeah. Usually it's coldness, but this room, there's been incubus activity reported in this room, and so some of the different interactions that we were getting on the ghost box were addressing that, and it kind of worked. I mean, that was another thing that Vanessa picked up on. We were like, okay, we're in this room, and she's like, yeah, I feel, people get pinned down here. It's like, well, that's one of the things that happened during the incubus attacks. But it was a humorous moment, but not at the same time. Dave Spinks had gotten hooked to his chair because we had he had set up a little station with a chair, a little table with a laptop on it because we were live streaming on YouTube. And the way that his belt loop got hooked onto this chair, there's like no way that he could have possibly just sat down and randomly done this. It's like something hooked him to the chair.
That's funny.
So we have this, and I've got it on my video on the Bel Air house, my Paranormal Rose video on the Bel Air house, where we're trying to get this chair off, and we're kind of like twisting it around and all this crazy stuff to get it off this belt loop. Insane.
That's funny. Well, doesn't this house, it sits on a coal mine, portal.
Right.
Where 76 men were killed in an explosion?
Yeah, oh shoot, forget the name of the mine now, but yeah, the mine, the entrance to the mine is a couple miles off, but the mine tunnels run all over the place down there, and part of that mine does run under that house. And an explosion in, I think it was 1940, killed 72 men. So there's that under the house. One of the things that we're picking up on was soil, and so that pertained to, of course, underground, the mine shafts that were there. So there's also on the back side of the property, there's some caves there where there's some Native American artifacts and
like a burial
some
ground.
Relics back there. Yeah. It hasn't been confirmed that there's a burial back there, but that's what a lot of people suspect that the caves were used for. But
So that's got to bring a lot of activity to the house too. Because from what I understand, no matter how many times they cleanse it, they can't get rid of the activity. Yeah,
there's something about you rustle up the any Native American burial grounds, the mounds, or anything like that, And even if you try to cleanse it, no, you desecrated it. You're done. You're going to have something forever now.
Yeah. That's wild. Okay. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Christine. I
You know,
really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank you as well as Ross Raposo and the Paranormal King Radio Network for having us on. I want to thank everybody in chat and all you listeners. You guys are all great. For more shows, you can always go to paranormalking.com. And for more haunted, you can always go to mysterieshauntedsalem.com. And, look up Mike on YouTube. You can check out all his work, his YouTube channels, everything like that. If you just want to give them one more time where they can catch you, Mike, that'd be great.
Yeah, you can find me at MikeRicksecker.com or HauntedRoadMedia.com. My YouTube channel is Haunted Road Media. And, of course, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I would wish you a great night. I wish everyone else a great night, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. You're welcome. Good night. That ends this episode of Beyond the Grave Radio with Haunted Salem, where the dead educate the living. Thank you for listening to what the dead had to say. All the stories mentioned are true, and if interested in more, visit us at mysteriesofhauntedsalem.com.